Well, welcome to Speaking of Horses. I'm your host, Wayne Williams, and we're ready to go right here with some of the great stories from the horse industry. So join us as we get ready to go speaking of horses right here on this station. Well, hey, welcome to Speaking of Horses. Today, we want to talk a little bit about fencing. It's one of those things that people have to do. Fencing is an integral part of owning horses or any livestock. But it's always something that seems to get put off because people just don't get into what they've got to do and how simple it can really go together. So they make it tougher, I think, than it is. But my guest today is Brad Moore. He's Chief Officer and General Manager for Timeless Fence Systems. So first of all, good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Wayne.
And we're glad to have you join us. We're glad to be working with Timeless Fence again. Now, you know, we got some questions that we kind of looked at here about fencing, and this is the time of year as the weather is broken now. Finally, you know, we were just commenting the other day here in Wisconsin where we live that 3 weeks ago we were still looking at some piles of snow. So it's just unbelievable that we've jumped right into summer almost. But people have to get into fencing and handling these things. So what do you see are the biggest misconceptions that people have about putting up fencing?
Well, really that it's hard and complex. There's a lot of fencing options available, and that can be overwhelming when folks don't really know what it is they're looking for. But I found, Wayne, that if you spend a little bit of time up front doing some research, doing your homework, that it will save you a lot of trouble down the road. There's a saying that good fences make good neighbors, and a good fence starts with a good plan. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to build fence the same way that your dad did or that your grandfather did. And there's lots of new tools and equipment available that make installation easier and can save a lot of time in future maintenance.
Well, I think that's right. There's some really innovative products too that work well. That it isn't what we used to put up as a kid. I used to get the dubious honor of either driving metal posts with a driver or taking a regular old post hole digger and digging the holes. And, when you're doing it manually, as you go down the fence line, those holes get a little shallower all the time because you cheat. You're getting tired. But the concept that, say, you have with Timeless Fence, makes a lot of this much easier than people really realize.
Yeah, that's right. We kind of take a simple approach to things. We want the landowner, the hobby farmer, to have a good experience putting up their fence. We want it to be easy, with few tools required, nothing that you're going to have to go out and spend a lot of money for, and saving money by not having to hire it out.
And your system is so simple and so easy to put up that, you can put up a very good fence, very simple. You can do it yourself. So the overall cost of getting that fence up when you don't have to go into contractor mode is so much, cheaper, so much less costly for a top grade fence. It's, it's just a concept that, well, our second question here was, why is putting up fencing always perceived as difficult? And that's what we're talking about. Why do you think everybody thinks it's so hard?
Well, most folks are used to working with more traditional fencing materials like wood and steel, and you mentioned your own personal experience with that. These materials are heavy. They're difficult to move around when you're out in the pasture and need to have materials in different places. And oftentimes, you need some special equipment to be able to do the installation. And for the average hobby farmer, they may not either have access to that equipment or have any experience with it. And there's so many accessories that really it can be overwhelming just trying to figure out what it is that you really need. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about planning, and that if you just spend a little extra time up front one, but you're going to be a lot better off rather than just jumping into something because this is the way that it's always been. That doesn't necessarily make it right.
Well, I agree with that. Now, one of our questions too here is what makes a functional fencing system simple and economical? What do you think makes it much simpler than people think?
Well, it's all about the materials. Now, our approach at Timeless Fence is to use a very simple concept that uses longer-lasting materials that eliminate many of the problem areas that people have with their fence, and also providing materials that require virtually no maintenance. And that's where a lot of folks get into trouble, is even during the planning stages, they don't consider ongoing maintenance in their costs. As the old saying goes, you get what you pay for. And
right.
When you're replacing cheap or inexpensive fence components that have broken or failed, or even at times have to be painted, these are things that cost time and money. And let's face it, time is money.
Yeah, and I'm going to hit on this right now because, I spent some time in your trade show booth at Equine Fair in Ohio in the middle of April, and spent quite a bit of time standing next to the owner of your company, to Russ. And there was one thing that kept echoing in my brain that he would talk about to different, prospective buyers of your product. Is that with the technology of today, not only can you design these better systems, but you can actually, through GPS, through Google Maps or whatever it is, you can actually, with the right coordinates, get a look at somebody's piece of property from the satellite, look at how it's laid out from an aerial view, and totally design a fence system, from your office just by looking at these aerial shots you can pull up on the internet.
Yeah, that's right. There's so many tools available at our disposal that make it so much easier than having to be on site, walking the pasture, planning things out. We can use these tools, like you mentioned, the GPS mapping, to be able to come up with a fence plan for someone, send them a picture of what that fence would look like with dimensions and measurements, and be able to plan a job from start to finish very easily.
Yeah, that's the new high-tech things that people don't just think about, that you could go out there, say you bought a new piece of property, and you've got 6, 7, 8, 10, 20, whatever acres to fence in, and you just don't think about the fact that you could sit in your offices in Tennessee, pull this thing up, look at that piece of property, see all the zigs and zags, and map out, very accurately, what it's going to take to put that fence up. And your system does, go up so simple and work so functionally, and that kind of brings us to our next question we wanted to discuss about, can a major fencing job be done without a contractor? I think we've said yes, but you care to comment on that a little more?
Yeah, Wayne, while it may be easier to hire a contractor to install the fence for you, it's certainly not cheap. And there's a lot of things to consider. If you have a lot of corners or turns, if you have several gate openings, this can really jump up your price pretty quickly when you're having it installed by a contractor. And with the availability of information on the internet, from the fence planning tools like we talked about earlier, videos on YouTube, information on the latest fence installation equipment, a lot of this information has been designed and made for the beginner. And so someone who has no experience putting up a fence, in just a few short minutes, can go online, do some research, find out everything that they need to know to put a fence in, and save themselves a lot of money. And what I'm finding is that there are a lot of local equipment rental stores that are stocking some of the same items that these contractors use, and will rent them for some really reasonable rates, which keeps the landowner from having to make a large purchase or paying someone else to do the job for them.
Right. It's back to what makes a fencing system easy and functional, and I think it has to do with the equipment itself and just understanding the job you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's all about simplicity. A fence doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be built to hold an elephant either. We recommend the use of electric fencing for all livestock. Electric fencing in particular is very economical. It's easy to install, and it lasts for a long time. And it can be customized in all types of ways. There's many different types of wire, high visibility wire, which are certainly preferred by those that own horses, PVC coated high tensile wire, which is very safe. There's really something for just about any type of application.
Well, and your system, with the post being the insulator, the post is a very high strength poly post, and it is the insulator. It's pre-drilled, so it's real simple to put up. You can space your posts a little further apart. The key is getting your corner posts set correctly, and it's almost like an erector set. If you design where they're going, you almost can't mess it up.
That's right. It all starts with the corner, and from there, stringing lines is very simple. Putting the posts in the ground is very easy to do. Again, doesn't require anything special as far as equipment's concerned. And you can have a fence installed in a relatively easy amount of time and without a lot of effort.
Well, we're running a little shy on time, Brad, but how do people contact Timeless Fence Systems?
So they can contact us a couple of different ways. They can go to our website, which is under our corporate name, and that's www.plastic-innovation.com. They can get our contact information there. They can request a free sample kit of our material, or they can simply call our office at 800-788-4709.
Well, we're running shy on time, but any fencing concerns, any fencing jobs, get a hold of Timeless Fence and let them help you. Brad, thanks for joining us.
Wayne, I enjoyed it.
All righty, hang on. We're right here at Speaking of Horses. Well, that's our show. I'm your host, Wayne Williams. Speaking of Horses, we'll be back next week with a brand new show. Or join us at speakingofhorses.com.